It all began with a text, a small favor that seemed so ordinary at the time. My friend Nate, someone I'd known since we were kids, messaged me asking if I could help his dad get home. His car's in the shop and I'm stuck at work. Can you give him a ride? He wrote. No big deal. I'd known Mr. Calloway for years. He was always just Nate's dad to me. Polite, well put together. The kind of man who carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who'd seen a lot in life but didn't need to brag about it. There was no hesitation in my reply. Sure, no problem, I said, not realizing this would be a turning point I'd never forget. When I pulled up to the office building, I expected to find a tired man ready to head home after a long day. But what I saw caught me off guard. Mr. Calloway stood at the curb in a navy blue suit that fit like it was made for him. His salt and pepper hair was neatly styled, his posture confident, and when he slid into the passenger seat, the scent of his cologne, warm, spicy, and refined, filled the space between us. You're a lifesaver, he said, flashing a smile that felt far more personal than it should have. We made small talk at first. He asked about Nate, about work, about my life. But it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. His voice was low and smooth, and his gaze lingered just a second longer than it needed to. A quiet energy settled between us, something I couldn't quite explain. I reminded myself this was my friend's father, that I was just doing him a favor. But as the miles passed, something shifted. The way he looked at me, the calm confidence in his voice, the warmth in the car that had nothing to do with the heater, it all started to feel different. That short ride should have been uneventful. But it marked the beginning of something far more complicated, far more intimate, and ultimately, something that would change my life in ways I never saw coming. Mr. Calloway wasn't just any man. From the moment he stepped into the car that evening, there was something about him, an energy, a presence, that was impossible to ignore. He didn't need to say much to draw attention. It was in the way he carried himself, shoulders squared, back straight. His every movement measured yet effortless. The tailored suit he wore looked like it belonged on a magazine cover, hugging a frame that spoke of strength and years of discipline. His salt and pepper hair was immaculately groomed, and his deep-set blue eyes held the kind of gaze that didn't just meet yours. It held it, studied it, as if trying to read between the lines of your silence. Though he was just my friend's father, that evening he was something else entirely. He didn't talk like other men his age. There was an edge to his voice, a deliberate calm that made every word feel chosen, like he was letting you into a world you didn't quite belong in, but couldn't resist exploring. When he spoke, it wasn't just small talk, it was personal, intentional. The questions he asked weren't filler. He wanted to know. And more than that, he listened. What caught me off guard, though, was the way he looked at me. At first, I thought I imagined it. That extra second his eyes stayed on me when he should have been glancing away. But it happened again. And again. It wasn't overt or inappropriate, just lingering. It felt like he saw something in me that I hadn't yet seen in myself. Not judgmental. Not even curious. Just aware. The way a seasoned man might recognize something familiar in another soul. The longer we drove, the more aware I became of him. Not just as Nate's dad, but as a man in his own right. A man who knew how to hold a room without raising his voice. A man who carried a lifetime of secrets in the quiet lines of his face. And suddenly I found myself watching him back. Listening closer. Breathing slower. Trying to make sense of a feeling that had no name yet, but was undeniably growing. I hadn't expected this. Not from a man like him. But some people don't need to speak loudly to change everything. Mr. Calloway was one of them. We hadn't been driving long when Mr. Calloway leaned slightly toward me and said, "I need to make a quick stop before heading home." His voice was smooth, steady, but there was something in the way he said it, like the words held a second meaning I wasn't meant to catch. I nodded, of course. After all, I was just doing a favor. Still, the air in the car shifted. It was subtle at first, but I felt it. The way he tapped his fingers on his knee. His eyes occasionally drifting toward me with something unreadable in them. A quiet energy settled between us. Not heavy, but not light either. The kind that made your skin prickle and your thoughts wander. We pulled up in front of a townhouse tucked into a quiet neighborhood. Nothing flashy. Just neat, still, and maybe a little too quiet. The porch light glowed faintly, casting a dim yellow arc over the steps. Mr. Calloway stepped out and adjusted his jacket with a practiced motion. "I won't be long," he said, offering a small smile. I watched as he walked to the door and knocked twice. Moments later, another man answered. Tall, broad, and sharply dressed in a dark button-down shirt. They spoke briefly, almost too quietly to seem casual. I waited in the car, trying not to stare, but I couldn't help watching their body language. There was something stiff about it. Their exchange wasn't relaxed, and though Mr. Calloway wore that same composed expression, something about his posture gave him away. He looked cautious, maybe even regretful. Minutes ticked by. I checked my phone, drummed my fingers on the steering wheel. When the door finally opened again, Mr. Calloway returned, but not alone. The other man stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching. Not waving goodbye. Not smiling. Just watching. As Mr. Calloway slid back into the car, I saw it in his eyes. Just for a second. Something had happened in that house. Something unspoken, unfinished, and not meant for me to see. "Sorry about the delay," he said, his tone casual, but his fingers fidgeted with his tie. I didn't press. Not yet. But the tension between us had changed. And somehow, I knew that mysterious stop was only the beginning of what was unraveling. The ride back from that townhouse began in silence. Not the kind of peaceful quiet that settles after a long day, but a tight, uneasy stillness that seemed to cling to the air between us. Mr. Calloway sat in the passenger seat, hands clasped together, eyes fixed on the windshield like he was seeing something far beyond the road. I kept my focus straight ahead, but the questions were starting to pile up in my mind. What had happened back there? Who was that man at the door? And why did Mr. Calloway look like he'd just walked out of a memory he'd rather forget? I didn't plan on speaking, but when something doesn't sit right, it has a way of demanding your attention. I was about to ask a question when I noticed the headlights in the rearview mirror. Bright, steady, and a little too close. First I figured it was just traffic. But every time I switched lanes, the car behind us did the same. It wasn't tailgating. It was tracking. My gut tightened. "I think we're being followed," I said, my voice low. Mr. Calloway turned slowly, his jaw tightening as he looked behind us. His answer came quietly, but there was no mistaking the urgency. "Drive faster." That was all I needed to hear. I cut through back streets and side roads, hoping to lose them. My heart pounded as I watched the glowing headlights cling to us like a shadow. Mr. Calloway's calm exterior had finally cracked. His fingers clenched into fists, his eyes darting between the side mirror and me. Every turn felt tighter, every second longer. The car behind us was relentless, following every move like a hunter on familiar ground. Then, just like that, it was gone. No headlights, no engine hum, just the empty road ahead. I didn't slow down. Not yet. "Take me somewhere safe," he said softly, and this time, his voice held no charm, no control, just exhaustion. That was when I realized how serious this really was. This wasn't some jealous ex or awkward secret. This was something darker, older, and far more dangerous than I'd expected. And now, without meaning to, I was right in the middle of it with no way to turn back. We didn't speak much as I drove. The city lights gave way to quieter streets, their neon signs fading into flickering porch lamps and the warm glow of tired convenience stores. Mr. Calloway had gone quiet again, his fingers tracing slow, restless lines across the leather seat, like he needed something, anything to ground himself. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting those headlights to reappear. But the road stayed empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, even if the danger had slipped into the shadows for now. Eventually, I pulled into a run-down motel on the edge of town. The kind of place where no one asked questions, where the buzz of the vending machine in the corner was louder than the clerk's greeting. The man at the front desk looked like he'd seen it all. Bored, thinning hair, yellowed teeth, and a crime show rerun playing on the small TV behind him. Mr. Calloway gave a name I didn't recognize and slid a credit card across the counter. No hesitation. No explanation. He knew what he was doing. We climbed a narrow staircase with threadbare carpet and a faint smell of old smoke clinging to the walls. The room was small. Just one bed, a scratched-up dresser, and a lamp that flickered every time the heater kicked on. Mr. Calloway walked in first, shoulders stiff, but his movements deliberate, like he'd done this before. Like hiding was muscle memory. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands on his thighs, staring at the floor in silence. The weight of the night, the fear, the chase, the mystery, seemed to settle all at once on his frame. I leaned against the door, arms crossed, waiting for him to speak. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" I asked, my voice firmer than I felt. He let out a slow breath, a humorless chuckle escaping him. "You always were persistent." I didn't reply. I just watched as the careful man I thought I knew started to unravel. And in that small, forgotten room, far from anyone who could see, the real story, the one buried under years of secrecy and survival, was about to come out. Whether I was ready or not. The air inside the motel room was still, thick with tension and the scent of faded linen and old cologne. Mr. Calloway sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders heavy, as if years of silence were finally becoming too much to carry. I didn't push him. I waited, letting the quiet settle. Sometimes people need space to find their truth. When he finally looked up, his expression was different. Tired, yes, but also open in a way I hadn't seen before. "His name is Victor," he said softly. Just the name alone seemed to carry weight, like it had teeth. He paused, swallowing hard before continuing. "We met 2 years ago. I was in a bad place. My marriage was falling apart, and I didn't know who I was anymore. Victor made me feel alive again. Wanted. Seen." He didn't meet my eyes when he said it, but he didn't need to. The pain in his voice said everything. I could see the struggle in the way his hands fidgeted, the flicker of shame beneath his words. "I thought it was love," he added. "But Victor doesn't love. He controls." That's when it clicked. The man at the townhouse. The car that followed us. The haunted look in Mr. Calloway's eyes. This wasn't just a broken relationship. This was a man trying to escape something that had buried its claws deep. "You don't have to do this alone," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You don't owe me anything." "I know." Silence settled between us again, but this time it was different, charged with something quiet and powerful. He looked at me then, really looked. And in that moment something shifted. The lines between past and present, safety and risk, blurred. "I'm not a kid anymore," I said. His eyes softened, and without a word, he reached for me. My fingers brushed his sleeve. Just a simple touch, but it carried years of weight. And when our lips met, slow and uncertain, it wasn't about lust or escape. It was about being seen, understood, chosen. In the heart of a cheap motel room, two people adrift in their own lives found something real, if only for the night. It began with a single kiss, hesitant, almost cautious, but filled with years of emotion neither of us had ever spoken aloud. What should have been one fleeting moment of comfort quickly unraveled into something far more intense. Mr. Calloway didn't pull away, and neither did I. Instead, he leaned into me like he'd been waiting for this, like he'd spent years wondering what it might feel like to finally be seen and wanted without fear or judgment. His hands were steady but deliberate, sliding up my arms, holding me as though he needed the weight of another person just to stay grounded. There was no rush, no performance, just quiet, building urgency. We weren't two strangers chasing desire. We were two men who had been carrying loneliness like a second skin, now finally daring to shed it. The motel room, dingy and dim, faded around us. The hum of the heater, the flickering lamp, even the fear from earlier that night, all of it fell into the background. There was only him and me. Every glance, every breath, every touch said what words couldn't. We didn't need to explain. We just needed to feel. By the time we were lying tangled together in the worn sheets, skin still warm and breath uneven, the room had become something sacred. His arm lay across my chest, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the line of my collarbone. Neither of us spoke, but the silence wasn't awkward. It was full, comforting, honest. Then he whispered, "Nate can never know." It wasn't a threat, just a statement of fact, one I already understood. My heart ached, but I nodded. "I know." Another long pause. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "I don't regret it." I looked over at him. His hair tousled, his jaw still tight but softer now, and his eyes. His eyes held something I hadn't seen before. Relief, gratitude, maybe even the early flicker of something like love. "Neither do I," said. We both knew things would get complicated. They always do. But in that moment there was no guilt, just peace. Because what we had shared wasn't reckless. It wasn't shameful. It was real. And real things, no matter how short-lived, have a way of changing us forever. Morning came slowly, the gray-blue light of dawn slipping through the thin motel curtains like a gentle reminder that the real world hadn't gone anywhere. I lay still for a while, listening to the steady rhythm of Mr. Calloway's breathing beside me. His arm was draped over my waist. His body relaxed in a way I hadn't seen before. As if, for just one night, he'd finally allowed himself to let go. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the old building settling around us. The scent of the night still clung to the sheets. His cologne, the heat of our bodies, the sharp memory of everything we'd shared. I stared at the ceiling, trying to sort through what it all meant. What we had done wasn't just a mistake made in the dark. It was deliberate, intimate, needed. I turned my head to look at him. His face was softer in sleep, lips parted slightly, brow no longer furrowed. But the moment he stirred, I saw it return, that quiet weight behind his eyes. He sat up slowly, rubbing a hand over his face, the blanket slipping down his chest. For a long moment we didn't speak. Then I asked, "What happens now?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned over, placed a light kiss on my temple and whispered, "We figure it out." It was a hopeful answer, but I knew better than to let myself believe it would be simple. Outside this motel room, things would be different. There was Nate, my friend, his son. There was Victor, the man lurking in the shadows. And there was the fact that we had no plan, only a night filled with emotion and a growing sense that this wasn't over. Still, in that moment I didn't care about any of it. All I could feel was the way he looked at me. Not like a secret, not like a mistake, but like I was something he didn't want to lose. And that was enough. Least for now. We both knew we couldn't stay in that room forever. But as we got dressed and prepared to face whatever waited outside, one thing was clear. Something had started between us, and no matter how complicated it got, neither of us was ready to let it go.